talking about.
Respectfully,
And
Madam
so,
Secretary, I think
well,
that-
let me finish.
The former Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice, absolutely destroyed Sunny Hostin on The View. And trust me, it was brutal.
We'll find out.
We
But
must find out
we will
before
find out.
moving on.
We will find out. But I'm going to tell you, I live in California, not Washington, D.C. And the American people do have other concerns that we ought to be thinking about.
From heated debates on race to fiery exchanges on education, Condoleezza didn't just hold her ground. She dominated with facts, grace, and a level of composure that had the audience stunned. And let's just say, no amount of interruptions could save Sunny this time. So buckle up, because this was one of the most epic showdowns The View has ever seen.
First of all, let me be very clear. I said at the time, January 6th was wrong. I called it an assault on law and order and an assault on our democratic processes. So full stop, it was wrong.
It all started when Sunny Hostin made some bold comments on the anniversary of January 6th. She didn't hold back, calling it one of the worst events in American history and drawing comparisons to the Holocaust and slavery. The weight of her words immediately sparked a reaction, both on the show and across social media.
It's really politically expedient for Mitch McConnell to say, let's move on, let's move on. The problem is that past will become prologue if we don't find out exactly what happened January 6th.
And we will.
So it's not...
She argued that the country was losing its moral clarity, pointing out how some politicians initially condemned the attack but later softened their stance. She specifically mentioned Mitch McConnell, who had once placed the blame on Trump but seemed to shift over time. As Hostin continued, she insisted that moving on from the Capitol riot was not an option. She recalled Condoleezza Rice saying on the same show that it was time to look ahead, to which she firmly disagreed.
Law enforcement will determine what happened there, and those who violated the law ought to be punished. Now,
But during this discussion, Condoleezza Rice maintained a composed stance. She acknowledged that the attack was wrong, a clear assault on democracy and law and order, but she also emphasized the importance of addressing the everyday struggles of Americans. Rising gas prices, inflation, and economic issues were at the forefront of people's concerns, she argued. While Rice didn't dismiss the seriousness of the Capitol riot, she suggested that the country needed to prioritize moving forward.
Now, I think what Senator McConnell may be referencing is, yes, it's time to move on in a lot of ways.
Hostin, however, refused to let go of the past, countering Rice's argument by stating that history would repeat itself if the incident wasn't addressed properly. Rice, unshaken, responded that Americans were more worried about their overdue bills than dwelling on a past event.
I'm one who believes that the American people are now concerned about their what we call kitchen table issues, the price of gasoline, inflation. We ought to move on to the next generation, move ahead and deal with the American people's issues.
This moment shifted the energy of the conversation, creating visible tension. Hostin struggled to steer it back, but Rice held firm in her belief that the American people had more pressing concerns. Rice then broadened the conversation to parental involvement in education. She advocated for parents having a say in their children's schooling, stressing the importance of active engagement. Drawing from her own upbringing, she shared how her parents never let her feel victimized by prejudice, but instead encouraged her to rise above it. She criticized the way race discussions were being handled, arguing that neither white children should be made to feel guilty, nor black children to feel powerless. History, she said, should be taught fully, the good and the bad, but in a way that empowers rather than divides. She dismissed the idea that race relations were worse now than in the past, referencing her own experiences growing up in segregated Alabama as proof that progress had been made.
Sunny, I also know that as a government and as a country, we've got to be concerned about the things that are making life hard for Americans and hard for American families. First of all, parents ought to be involved in their children's education. Their children are in school 7 hours. That's a very formative period.
Meanwhile, the reaction to Hostin's comments online was swift and unforgiving. A clip of her remarks went viral, with an account called Stop Anti-Semitism condemning her comparison. They pointed out that over 6 million Jews were massacred in the Holocaust, calling her analogy not just inappropriate, but outright offensive. The backlash in the comment section was relentless. Some demanded that The View be cancelled, others suggested legal action against the show, and many called for Hostin's firing. Next, the discussion shifted to education, and this was where Condoleezza Rice truly stood out.
I think parents ought to have a say. We used to have parent-teacher conferences. We used to have PTAs. There are lots of ways for parents to be involved, and they should.
She spoke passionately about the role of parents in shaping their children's education, emphasizing how crucial it is for them to be actively involved in school matters. She reminisced about a time when parents regularly attended PTA meetings and engaged in teacher conferences, ensuring they had a say in what their children were learning. In her view, parental involvement was not just beneficial, but essential.
My parents never thought I was going to grow up in a world without prejudice, but they also told me that's somebody else's problem, not yours. You're going to overcome it, and you are going to be anything you want to be.
However, this stance clearly did not sit well with Sunny and some of the other panelists. As soon as Condoleezza made her point, Sunny attempted to counter, suggesting that her perspective oversimplified the complicated issues facing education today. Condoleezza, however, was unaffected. She was prepared to defend her viewpoint, particularly when it came to the issue of how race is addressed in schools. She pointed out how the divisive narratives surrounding race are not serving children well and, in many cases, are doing more harm than good.
One of the worries that I have about the way that we're talking about race is that it either seems so big that somehow white people now have to feel guilty for everything that happened in the past. I don't think that's very productive. Or
she firmly stated that she wanted black children to feel empowered, to know that their blackness is beautiful, and to have confidence in themselves. But she clarified that this could be achieved without making white children feel guilty for their race. Her words hit hard, cutting through the usual rhetoric and presenting a perspective that was both clear and compelling.
Or black people have to feel disempowered by race. I would like black kids to be completely empowered, to know that they are beautiful in their blackness, but in order to do that, I don't have to make white kids feel bad for being white.
Sunny's reaction was priceless. She appeared visibly unsettled, shifting in her seat as she tried to formulate a response. Condoleezza, however, did not waver. She continued presenting her arguments with logics and facts, making it difficult for anyone to challenge her without sounding unreasonable. As the conversation moved toward race relations in America, the discussion became even more intense. Sunny and the others on the panel insisted that race relations had worsened in recent years. Condoleezza, however, was not buying into that narrative. She pushed back, recalling her own experiences growing up in Jim Crow, Alabama. She reminded everyone that real, tangible progress has been made over the years, and that to claim otherwise is to dismiss the hard-won achievements of the past. She made it clear that while challenges remain, it is inaccurate and counterproductive to suggest that society has not moved forward. Sunny's expressions throughout this segment were out of control. It was clear she wanted to argue, but Condoleezza's first-hand experiences and factual approach left little room for rebuttal. This was not just another heated debate, it was a reality check. Then came the moments that truly turned the discussion upside down. Condoleezza, in her composed and articulate manner, stated that the American people are tired of being told what to think. What they need, she explained, is empathy, not more division. Her words were direct, cutting through the noise and striking a chord with many in the audience. Sunny, now clearly frustrated, interrupted yet again, raising her voice in an attempt to steer the conversation in a different direction. But Condoleezza remained steady, reiterating that leaders should prioritize the real issues affecting Americans, things like inflation, border security, and the rising cost of living. These, she argued, are the concerns keeping families up at night, not the divisive rhetoric that so often dominates media discussions. The audience's response was unmistakable. They erupted into applause, showing their support for Condoleezza's message. Sunny, on the other hand, was visibly annoyed. Sensing the growing tension, Whoopi Goldberg quickly stepped in, attempting to change the subject. But the damage had already been done. Sunny's repeated attempts to dominate the conversation had backfired spectacularly, while Condoleezza's calm and composed responses had won the day.